Welcome back to Beginning Sock Knitting with the Twisted Skein. My name is Amanda Swanson and I'm your instructor today. This video is going to demonstrate how to cast on for a sock using two circular needles. And I'm going to demonstrate using a twisted German cast on. Now you can use any kind of stretchy cast on when you start socks. My particular favorite is the twisted German. I really like the decorative edge that it gives, and I find it's always stretchy enough for the top of my sock. When I knit on two circular needles, I like to make sure you want first to have the same size needle, but I like to have two different colors. You will sometimes notice there's a little bit of difference in size between needle brands. These two come out to be pretty much the same. But I like to have the different colored cables so I remember where I am in my sock. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cast on with this needle first. I'm going to get my yarn over here. This is fingering weight yarn. This is UU Fluffy Fingering. And when I read my ball band, it says that my gauge should be 7 stitches to the inch. Now when I knit a swatch for a sock, I am going to show you how to do kind of a hurry-up swatch. My last video, I demonstrated casting on a regular stockinette swatch, and then we're going to block that swatch. This one, I'm going to show you how to do a hurry-up swatch if you don't want to spend time swatching and then starting your sock. You can go ahead and start knitting your sock from the swatch, but you're going to have to estimate how many stitches to cast on, and we're going to give you a chart to help you figure out how to do that. You'll find the link below the video. Alright, so I know at 7 stitches per inch I want my sock to fit me. Normally when I cast on socks and fingering weight yarn, I cast on 64 stitches. If you don't know how big around or what your gauge is in this yarn, but you want to cast on a hurry-up sock swatch, you can go ahead and cast on somewhere between 64 and 72 stitches. That's usually fairly common for the average female or smaller male. If you're larger, you're going to want to do a swatch. We're going to want to measure it and calculate what's going to be the best size for you. You want any sock that you knit to have a little bit of negative ease. That means that when you measure around your swatch, if it's unstretched and you measure around your leg, you have a little bit less in your sock in circumference. And that's what allows that sock to stretch and actually stay up on your calf once you've knit it. So I know, as I said, that I use 64 stitches. I'm actually going to go ahead and go a little less on this one because I'm demonstrating, but we're going to call it 64 stitches. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cast on with my twisted German cast on. You want a long tail because this does use up your yarn tail in the cast on. And I know for me, with fingering weight yarn, it takes me about a yard to get 50 stitches in fingering weight yarn. So you can always pull out your yardstick and measure that out. Or you can estimate using wraps per inch on your needle and estimate how many wraps it takes you to make 10 stitches. Take that off your needle, measure that length, and then multiply it times 6 or 7. So I've measured out my yard. I'm going to go ahead and start here. Okay, we're going to start in the slingshot position. I'm going to go ahead and make a loop around my needle for the first stitch. And then for the twisted German cast on, you're going to bring your needle forward, come under both of the stitches around your thumb, pull that needle up and down into the loop created over your thumb. Now watch my thumb, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it down as I bring that needle back, pick up the yarn over my index finger, and as my thumb comes down and around, I make a loop and an opening that I can pull that yarn through. Pull the loop up on my needle, snug it up. That's the first stitch. We'll do that again. Slingshot position, bring your needle under both loops on your thumb, come up and then down into the loop around your thumb, pull that forward, watch my thumb come all the way around and back up At the same time, I take my needle tip, grab over the yarn from my index finger, and pull it through the loop. Okay, I'm going to demonstrate this a few more times. Under both stitches, down into the loop, bring my thumb all the way around in a circle, grab the loop from my index finger, pull it through the loop. You don't want to pull these stitches too close together. We want to give them room to stretch once we have that cast on done. Okay. So as I was saying earlier, the average knitter usually casts on somewhere between 60, 72, somewhere in there, stitches in fingering weight yarn with a needle size between US 1, 1.5, 2, somewhere in that range. As I said in the first video, you want to make sure when you are knitting socks that you're making a good tight fabric because you want those socks to have a lot of wear in them. I'm going to go ahead and keep casting on here till I get half my stitches on the needle. As I said, I cast on 64 stitches, so half of 64 is going to be 32. Something caught. Alright, you can see I've cast on my 32 stitches, and I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to change to cast on my next needle. Now, if it's tricky for you to switch from one needle to the other, you could cast all of your 64 stitches on one needle and then slide half of them onto your second needle, or you can do it the way I'm going to demonstrate. So 32 on my red needle, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cast on the other 32 onto my blue needle, I'll call it. Okay, just hold the needles parallel, try not to leave a gap as I pull that stitch up, and then I'm just going to keep casting on here. Alright, I'll see you when I get to the end of the round. Alright, I've now cast my 64 stitches on, 32 on my red needle, 32 on my blue needle, and now I'm going to join this to work in the round. So I'm going to very carefully take my work, making sure I am keeping my cast on, pointing the same direction on both ends. I'm going to go ahead and hold on to the end of my blue needle. I'm going to slide my red needle through on the front of the sock until I get to the other side. Okay, feed that into my work. All right. I'm going to pull my blue needle through now so that my work is not hanging on the ends of my needle, and I'm going to let that blue needle hang down behind. I'm going to go ahead and take my working yarn here behind my red or front needle. I'm going to find the other end of my front needle because when I work the front half of my sock, I want to use the same needle across the front side and then both ends of the same needle for the back side. Okay, I'm going to bring these together. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start my ribbing. This is going to be 2 knit, 2 purl ribbing. Pulling those first couple stitches a little bit tight so that I don't have any gaps or jogs at the beginning of my round. I'm just going to go ahead and knit this across in my ribbing pattern, knit 2, purl 2. You could also use a knit 1, purl 1 ribbing. That works well for socks as well. It's completely up to your preference. But essentially what we're doing here now is we are starting your sock. And then once we've knit a good distance on this sock, we're going to go ahead and take it off the needle, put it on some waste yarn, and block it so that we can make sure that it fits us, that we like the way the yarn looks, that it's going to be comfortable as a sock, and that we have our gauge right. Just going to work across here. I'm down to the last 2 stitches here. I'm up to the 2 purl stitches in my pattern. I'm going to purl these last 2 stitches on my red needle, my front needle. Okay, now I'm going to take my red needle, I'm going to slide those stitches into the center of my needle so they don't try and escape. Now I'm going to turn my work around, and I'm going to begin working on my back needle. So I'm going to slide these stitches up so that they're in position on the needle. Bring that yarn up behind. I just finished with 2 purl stitches, so my next 2 stitches are going to be knit stitches. I'm bringing up the other end of my blue or back needle. As I said, the color coding really helps me keep them straight. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to knit the next 2 stitches. Again, because I have that gap between needles, I like to pull a little bit tighter for the first 2 stitches on each needle when I change. Continue working around here in pattern. And we'll get back to the beginning. Coming to the end of my back needle, I have 2 purl stitches left. Alright, now I've gotten there. I'm going to be ready to pull my back needle through, get my stitches where they're safe in the middle of the needle. I'll let those drop, and I'm going to turn back to my front needle. Now you see I've got a really big gap there between my needles. That's okay. That's going to go away when I pull these up. Bring around the end of my front needle, and I'm back to knitting the next round of my sock. Now at this point in time, I like to go ahead and place a marker so that I know where the beginning of my round is. Because I have these needles that are open at the end, I like to use a bulb safety pin. I'm going to go ahead and position that around the very first stitch on my front needle. This tells me where the beginning of my round is. All right, hang that right there, and I can continue knitting in the round. All right, I'm going to knit an inch of ribbing, and then I'm going to come back and do some stockinette for about 2 more inches until I have a good 3-inch swatch. And then I'm going to show you how to get this on some waste yarn so that we can block it.